Hello. It didn't play my intro. I don't know why I didn't play my intro, but that's okay. That's okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my Crystal Loves Texas podcast. Of course, you recognize these two ladies sitting beside me because you see them all the time. It is my sister Kim.
Hey y'all.
And my co-host Rebecca.
Hi.
And you are, I hope that you have tuned in and you are watching because people have been truly, let me turn this down. People have truly been waiting to hear from these gentlemen. And now we don't have any feedback there, but have been waiting to hear from these gentlemen. And I'll tell you, they are, and Gary is here. Let's see, he just tuned in. Let me get him in here. Hey, Gary Harrison, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Gary Harrison, can you hear us?
Yes.
Maybe he's still coming in, so we're gonna. But listen, we've got a treat for you tonight, and it's really, really special for me to have these gentlemen on, simply because they are two of my cherished friends for many years, but they also happen to be career law enforcement professionals. And when we talk about knowing the game from the bottom up, inside out, that is what they do. So with no further ado, I want to introduce you, and I got to get these titles right. Marvin, you got to bear with me. So no, I'm gonna let you do it. I've got Marvin Richardson, and he is going to tell you his title. He is one of my endorsees. Endorsees, is that what you call it? Endorsers. Yes. For my campaign. But not only is he that, he is a former federal law enforcement professional. And kind of introduce yourself to us, Marvin, and tell us your title. And I want people to understand why you were one of the people that I wanted to come on and explain what we're going to be talking about tonight.
For sure. First, let me say thank you, Crystal, Kim. I mean, it has been we've known each other a long time.
Just a second. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Marvin, say that again.
Okay, then let's start again here. So First, I'd like to say thank you, Crystal, Kim. We go back a long way.
Yes.
As Crystal indicated, look, we all went to college together. Eons ago. I'm not the eons for me. They're very young still. So for anyone listening, just know that Crystal is very young. I'm an older guy. But anyway, no. So my name is Marvin Richardson. And I'm coming to you from my home just outside of Washington, D.C. in Ellicott City, Maryland. I am the retired deputy director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Also served a couple of stints as the acting director of the agency during transitions on 2 occasions between both the Trump and Biden administration and the Trump Obama administration and the Trump Biden administration. So have literally served from the bottom of the agency to the top of the agency. I started in federal law enforcement just over 36 years ago. Put in 36 years. Started as a federal agent, just working the streets, working street crimes, firearms, alcohol, tobacco, explosives related violent crimes on the streets of Dallas, Texas is where I started. I'm a native Texan, so I forgot to put that in there. Born and bred, so grew up in a small community on the west side of Fort Worth called Lake Como. So shout out to all my people from Lake Como. Was just there recently over the weekend. So but my career spans 41 years in law enforcement.
Wow.
Before coming to ATF, I spent 5 years as a police officer at the University of North Texas Police Department. So shout out to UNT Police, which is where I also went to undergrad and got my degree there. Got a master's degree shortly thereafterwards in organizational leadership, and literally my career just over over my law enforcement career, I've always been one of those guys who, my father told me something one time. He said, son, you can stand outside the window at the department store and window shop, or you can go inside the store and get a job and
Yes.
change what's in the window.
Right.
Therefore, the world sees what you want them to see, right? So to me,
I
what
love
that
it.
meant was, it meant you could stand outside and look and talk, but nothing's going to change. Or you go in the store and get a job and make things change from the inside out. So that was me and law enforcement. So when you talk about how did I end up in this career, I had great friends who surrounded me. One of my best friends, who you guys know, Daryl Thornton.
Yes.
Daryl
Yes.
started his career there in law enforcement at the University of North Texas as well. We're fraternity brothers. He calls me up one day and says, "Hey, you should come to work. We should do this." And so, one thing led to another. And next thing you know, I was a lieutenant at the University of North Texas Police Department. 5 years later, he had already left to go to the FBI. I decided to leave. And
so many of our friends that we went to school with went into law enforcement.
They did.
Federal,
Thomas Hawthorne was one of those guys.
FBI,
And what's
Homeland Security?
Daryl Hubbard.
Yeah,
Yep,
FBI,
Daryl Hubbard, FBI.
Yeah. Homeland Security. Yeah.
I think there was something in the water. I'm not sure.
I know. but,
Maybe.
but you know what? One of the reasons that I wanted to bring you and Gary on, and Gary, if you can hear us, go ahead and turn your mic on. There
Yes,
he is.
I have it on.
Turn your camera on. We want to see your face.
No, not right now.
Okay. Well, there's your football teammate right there. You see Marvin?
I don't.
You can't see?
You can't see?
No, I'm mobile right now.
Okay.
Okay. All right. No worries. As long as we can hear you.
Yes.
That's okay,
Well, Gary.
I still got the same.
What's up, Marv? What's up, boy?
Well, listen,
You go a
Gary.
long way back.
I know. And you know what? Thank you so much for jumping on, because I know today is your daughter's birthday and you are jumping on mobile. And I promise I'm not going to try to hold you all forever. But Gary, can you kind of give us a little bit of background on how you got into law enforcement
And what your title was.
and what your title was when you retired?
Well, I got into law enforcement, starting in high school.
Okay.
I was turning that down. I was getting some feedback.
Okay.
Can y'all hear me all right?
Yeah,
You got a little bit of feedback.
it's still a little background in there.
All right, what about now?
Perfect.
Better.
Okay, I got into law enforcement. I was interested in it. Like Marvin, I was at the North Texas State, now the University of North Texas, but it started in high school for me when they first started the criminal justice program in HISD.
Right.
And I took those classes, and it just, in the back of my mind, it just stuck with me. So I was, I went to school. I went to North Texas on athletic scholarship playing football, but I was like, well, after football, we got to have a career somewhere.
Right.
And so when the football came to an end, I'm like, well, let me do what I studied to do. And and I applied, and I started here locally in Houston and Harris County at the sheriff's office, and I started from the bottom up.
Wow. And tell me what those
way.
steps were. What were those steps, Gary?
Oh God, I started off working the jail.
Okay.
I worked the jail, and then I worked the criminal courts building. And I'm just gonna give you a brief summary of criminal courts building. Then I went to the streets working patrol. Then I became a field training officer, and after the field training officer, I became a homicide investigator. After the homicide investigator, I started promoting into the supervisory and management positions. And so went through sergeant and all that, and I retired as a Homeland Security commander.
Okay.
I was a watch commander where, like Marvin, he was a lieutenant at North Texas, so he was a shift commander, and sometimes he was probably the police chief at some time when the chief was absent.
Yes.
So he wore all those hats. I wore all those hats, and then I like I said, I ended up commanding the field operations command in Homeland Security, which incorporated the SWAT team, the helicopters, the planes, the boats, the hostage team, the bomb squad, the industrial security unit, the emergency management unit. So I had a vast experience with a lot of things.
And I want to say this. I'm gonna move that back so I don't have so much feedback. I'm not sure what's going on with this. Okay, now, yes. Hang on. Okay, I wanted to say this. I know they can hear me, Kim. Can y'all still hear me? Yes.
Sure.
I wanted to say this to Gary and Marvin, and we had to make a little bit of a shift with our audio tonight, so it's a little bit choppy, but we're gonna get through it. I wanted to say this to both Gary and Marvin while I have you on here. Both of you, we've seen within the past 6 months, I'm gonna say 6 to 7 months, the only thing we see on television now about policing is what's going on with our ICE division of, and can one of you explain to me exactly what the ICE division is, and tell us heretofore what has been the job of that division, or what they are trained to do, and what they serve, what purpose that they.
What were they originally started to cover? Initially, when they first started ICE has not been around forever.
In 2003, I think, right?
It was started probably in early 2000s.
So maybe I can give you a little.
Yeah, I think Marvin can hit the nail on the head with them.
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna turn this back up so we can hear them. Okay. Go ahead, Marvin, and then Gary.
Yeah, sure. So you're correct. ICE has not been around forever, and ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's a federal agency that exists inside the Department of Homeland Security. If you go back to post 9/11, and you remember that we made a change in government and we created the Department of Homeland Security, and so ICE, which is a predecessor of the former Immigration and Naturalization Service that used to exist in the Department of Justice, right? Just about all federal law enforcement used to really exist in the Department of Justice, with the exception of some investigative general's offices and the Treasury Department. Different places had their own arms of law enforcement, i.e., the Treasury Department was where ATF lived at the time, because our laws were based in tax code. That's how Al Capone was captured. He wasn't captured because of all the violent crime he did. It was a tax code that got him.
Right.
So we were in Treasury at the time, but after the Homeland Security Act went into place, people like INS went over to Homeland Security, and then they got branched out. They have Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and you have the Border Patrol, right? So CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. So they split those two functions up, created two sub-organizations inside the Department of Homeland Security. ATF was moved over to the Department of Justice. Secret Service stayed in Homeland. A lot of folks just kind of stayed. But that's kind of the history of how ICE came to be. Now, ICE's mission, right? You talk about Immigration and Customs Enforcement, right? It's in the name. So they did. They worked immigration and they worked customs enforcement. Primarily, it was, it was at the borders, it was at ports of entry into the United States, and it was within cities and municipalities throughout the inner country as well, right?
Right.
But so the shift, so to speak, right? Every administration has priorities, right? And during this administration, and it's no surprise to anyone, right? I mean, it happened in the last administration. They said they were going to come in, we're going to enforce, immigration, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And in order to do that, you have to shift focus. So initially, during the first Trump administration, there was a slight shift in focus.
Okay.
But that was a prelude to what has ended up being a major shift in focus. So I say that to say just about every federal agency today has some impact in the immigration mission. Okay. And I can say that because I ran the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. We enforced laws that would have allowed us to do certain things in that arena, i.e., criminal aliens and illegal alien in this country cannot possess a firearm. That's part of our jurisdiction. So those people could be arrested and taken out of the country, right?
Okay.
And one of the things that was said initially with the current administration was we're going to focus on criminal aliens, right?
Absolutely.
So there are criminal laws in just about every lane in federal law enforcement, including state and local law enforcement, that say you can and can't do certain things.
Right.
My jurisdiction, criminal alien, illegal alien, you can't possess a firearm, right? So that right there in and of itself, that's enough. But there's a but there. When the pendulum swings so far from one side to the other, you find yourself focused more on in this instance, the illegal alien part than necessarily the violent crime part, right? So that's just that's from a first-hand kind of a bird's eye view of the jurisdiction that I held when I was the deputy director versus what they do now, what ICE does now. They are now a focal point. They're small.
Exactly. You never heard about ICE. You never heard about ICE doing anything. Yes.
Correct.
Gary, what is your take on that, and especially what you've seen here in Houston from a standpoint of being right here and interacting with that particular agency here. We never heard about ICE here in Houston. Every once in a while you heard about it. And the last time I heard about it, I believe, was maybe in 2017 when some students did a walkout and they were talking about when Trump first came into office, his first term, and he wanted to show some strength. So he rounded some people up. But Gary, what have you seen change? Can you hear us? Gary, can you hear us? Gary, can you hear us? Gary, can you hear us?
Unmute. I think he's trying to get back.
Okay, he may be trying to get back in.
Yeah, jump in whenever you unmute.
Yeah, when you can jump in. But Rebecca has a question for you, Marvin.
Okay, as a career law enforcement professional, how does it make you feel when shortcuts are taken in hiring, training individuals for important police work?
Well, I think, the first thing is whenever you take a shortcut, you think you're going to get somewhere quicker. Sometimes you get to disaster quicker.
Yes.
And there are reasons that we have very stringent processes to hire people in law enforcement. It's because you give them an incredible amount of authority over people's lives.
Yes.
And when you're doing that, you want to make sure that the people that you're hiring are the best people, right? That's why in federal law enforcement, you can't, criminal histories, you can't have those, right? You can't, well, I won't say can't anymore, but what I will say is when I started.
Right.
Criminal histories, you couldn't have been involved in any kind of a violent crime or any of those kinds of things, right? No drugs, right? You couldn't have a drug history. You had to have a clean background, basically, right? And today, now, just because society is what it is, things change, right? So, for example, drug policies used to knock a lot of people out.
Exactly.
Now, drug policies have really kind of softened over time.
Wow.
And when I say that, society has changed, okay?
That's true.
And as a result, those laws have changed. And so someone who may have had, let's just take a marijuana conviction and say, well, you have ever possessed marijuana, you'd never be able to work for AT. Not when I came on the job.
Right.
If you ever smoked it, you were out, right?
Yeah.
That's 36 years ago. Today, those policies have changed. Why? Because in our society, the attitude towards those drugs that even though marijuana is still federally not something that is legal, it's still illegal in the federal ranks, but in state and locals, right? You see that you got all kinds of uses, recreational use, medical use, you name it. So things like that have changed over time, and therefore you now have people who can have small histories when it comes to different types of drugs. And every agency develops their drug policy and implements it based on, a lot of it's based on what their mission is, right? Because it's hard to be DEA. It's hard to be DEA and say, well, we'll take a guy who's used heroin.
No,
Right.
yeah, it's not happening.
But
Yeah.
if you're at a local police department, or if you're at a sheriff's department, or if you're at if you're at the FAA or something, and you got somebody who 20 years ago used this one time, that's going to be okay.
Right.
But it's harder when your jurisdiction focuses on things like that. So that's just a little bit of what you get, right? You really get what you pay for, right? I mean, and in this instance, when you go out and if you have a process that is not very stringent, then what you're going to get is a result that lets people kind of seep in through the cracks.
Yeah.
Perhaps should not.
Right.
Well, Marvin, that kind of brings up a question, and there's a question in my mind, because from what we see looking from the outside in, it's not necessarily seeping in through the cracks. It's like there are certain activities, there are certain
Personality types.
Personality types that are certain that are encouraged. They go and look for these types of people.
Yeah.
It's never been the case before, Marvin.
Yeah, because it seems like when they're going to look for these people, they're saying, okay, these people are going to be more in tune with my ideology. So I'm going to look over the fact that somebody has been,
Convicted of something,
or, heinous crimes, or, were beating up officers during January 6th. I'm just going to look over that because they align with my ideology, and I'm going to hire that person. So not only hire that person, we're going to give them sign-in bonuses to encourage those folks to come on in. And we're what, 22,000 deep right now, from what I understand and I have read, as far as ICE officers. That's more than the ICE officers had been prior.
Oh yeah, no question. And many other federal agencies have shrank during that time.
Yes.
My former agency being one of them. But you're right in that, the one thing I'll say is, remember, everybody works for somebody. In our system of government here in this country, right? Good, bad, or otherwise, to the victor go the spoil, so to speak, right? And so when an administration comes in, they have the authority, right, to kind of implement their plan, right? Now, everything should have guardrails, right? So I'm going to tell you, right? I mean, in law enforcement, I will tell you, in law enforcement, starts with the Constitution, okay? 4th, 5th, 6th, 14th Amendments, those are not obstacles, those are guardrails, okay?
Right.
And they're on there because officers need to be trained to those things, because they are being empowered to protect the civil liberties of individuals while they're enforcing laws. Okay, but but now go back to what I said. But when you don't take the time to do that to the degree that it is required, right? And you say, what does that mean? Well, I can only tell you that for my agency, guys go away and they go to 2 different schools at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. All told, they end up with about 16 weeks of training down in Glencoe, Georgia, right? And then after that, they come back and they're in a 3-year OJT program.
Wow.
Where they are free to, quote unquote, go out and be an independent agent. So all of that is done because it's so important to be able to make sure that they not only know but understand what those constitutional amendments really mean to the public writ large, right?
Yeah, because I think the training now for ICE, for what I read, that the training now is 6 to 8 months. And Christy, weeks. And even the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, she's even trying to cut that down. She is saying that that's too long. She said because the president is behind in his quota, the number of deportees that he's trying to take out,
Quota.
his quota, and his quota is being measured by Obama and Biden. So literally, I mean, this was literally the conversation, the interview that she gave on Sunday Meet the Press, that the quota is the Obama Biden administration separately. They have to meet that. They have to beat, in other words, the quota.
Mhm. Yeah.
And Miller, who was the architect of all of these, is saying that Trump is not deporting enough. And the conclusion that they came up with is because the training for the ICE officers are taking way too much.
So I'll go back to your question when you started. You asked me about taking shortcuts. Okay. And so when you take those shortcuts, it may be a fast way to get to some place, but it may not be the place that you want to be. Right.
Right.
So people have to look at that, and they have to make a judgment call, right? Do you want to get something fast, or do you want to get something right? And when you make the decision to do it fast, I'm not going to tell you that it can't be right, but I will tell you that you're setting yourself up for more wrong than right.
Right, exactly. Now, I have been listening to some things. There have been, so many things coming on the news about ICE officers getting basically, as we say, jammed up in situations that they shouldn't be in.
Right.
Trying to solicit
Minors.
minors, and things like that. And then
There was no background check done.
yeah, exactly. And then when they were actually confronted and getting ready to be arrested
By legitimate
by
officers.
legitimate police officers for a state, a man said, "I'm ICE boys," as though that was supposed to make everything he did okay.
Right.
And that seems to be an attitude that probably, and I don't know these people personally, but it seems in the climate, because they've been given so much leeway as far as literally being able to break what we would consider laws, that they feel like they're untouchable. I'm ICE boys. In other words, okay, you all are gonna just, y'all just, you slap me on the wrist and then I'll go on about my way, solicit to the minor, that kind of thing.
So you have to go back to
when
again,
people have been getting killed
Yes.
in ICE custody. People,
Let him respond to some of that.
Yeah.
No. I was going to say, so that takes us back to just what we talked about, right? I mean, if we're going to literally serve justice, it starts with the Constitution, right? Every person who dons a badge and carries a gun and as a law enforcement officer swears an oath, and you swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, yada, yada, yada. There are no names in there other than the Constitution of the United States of America. Right. And as a result of that, that's where your loyalty has to live, right? Because, and I'll go back to my own experiences. 41 years in law enforcement, the 36 years that I spent in federal law enforcement, I considered myself every day that I got up to carry out my duties as a special agent, I considered myself to be apolitical. Because the law is not Republican, it's not Democrat, it doesn't lean left, it doesn't lean right. It's like the yellow line down the middle of the highway.
Right.
It has to always maintain the consistency of being true to the laws, rules, regulations, in our case, of the United States of America. And you had to be able to enforce those without prejudice, bias, or anything, in order to ensure that you were being fair. There's a reason why Lady Justice is blind. And it is because it doesn't matter your political status, your socioeconomic status, your religious beliefs, whether or not you're a millionaire or a poor person, it doesn't matter. If you are here in this country legally, now there is something to be said about that, right? And you got to really look to those laws in order to really say, okay, well, where is the line, right? Because you only have so many resources to deal with things. And like I said, initially at the beginning, criminal aliens was the focus, right?
Right.
And you get that, right? Because we don't need people who are not supposed to be here committing crimes that
Right.
are impacting communities negatively, right?
Certainly.
That you could argue with, but you really
We can
don't
all
have
agree on that.
Yeah, let's agree. Yes.
So to that end, you can understand how you use your resources. But now you said there are not enough resources. Well, why aren't there enough resources? Well, if you broaden now the range at which you're looking, then you got to have more resources in order to impact that broader range, right? So
Right.
if it's now not just about criminal aliens and those people who are otherwise negatively impacting society, and it's
Right.
about the guy that works at McDonald's who pays
Yeah.
taxes,
Yeah.
then you have another. You see what I'm saying? So in other
Right.
words, that's where
Mhm.
the accordion effect comes in, right?
Mhm.
You're here, and now all of a sudden you're here, and with every administration, so
It's different.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you call it a pendulum, call it an accordion, whatever. There's always an expansion and a contraction,
Right.
depending upon whatever that particular administration's policies are and what they intend to accomplish.
So I have a question.
Let me jump in really quickly. Marvin, when we talked a little bit earlier today before you came on, when we were doing our preliminary talk, you said something that really resonated with me, and that is in law enforcement, you train your officers to, or officers should be trained to police communities and not people. Explain that a little more, because that is.
Well, again, when you think about, all of those groups that I kind of went over, right? Socioeconomic, religious, political, immigrant, whatever your status is, right? They're different. They're different. Just call them dividers in society. People are divided according to them, right?
Mhm.
Well, but when you go into communities, all those people are in the communities.
That's right.
Mhm.
And the laws that pertain to those communities and to those people within those communities applies to all of them, right?
Right.
And the way that you are to enforce them is fairly, right?
Right.
And if you do that fairly, then it really shouldn't matter, what political party a person is, what color a person is, what sex a person is, or none of those things should matter, because the law is the law for everyone. So when you police communities, you are in fact policing people, but you are doing it in a way in which it's kind of like the umbrella, right? Everybody wants to get under the umbrella when it rains because you don't want to get wet, right?
Yeah.
So you try to provide that kind of service under the umbrella, right? Because that's what you're trying to do, is impact the entire community. So you police communities. That's why you hear things when you hear community-oriented policing. You don't hear people-oriented policing, right?
Right.
You know that people are the ones that are being policed, but it's the community that you're focused on. And the way that we have to do that, you got to do it with a degree of fairness, with a degree of respect, with a degree of trustworthiness, so that a community can actually embrace law enforcement partner, right, and not fear it as some kind of an entity. And I say this, again, coming from a small Black community. When I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, the only time I saw the police coming in my neighborhood was when they would come to arrest somebody's daddy, somebody's brother, somebody's
That's right. Yeah.
And I say men right there for the most part, because that's what I saw. As a young boy growing up, that's who I saw leaving in those cars. But again, when you start talking about doing it fairly, over time, we have learned that if you engage the community, right? If you get involved with those religious leaders, with those business leaders, with those community leaders, if you get in there and you actually engage with them, we all want the same thing: safe communities. Nobody goes out and says, I want to live in the worst place where I could get killed walking out of my door any day of the week. Nobody says that. You want to live in the safest community possible. And the only way to really do that effectively is to be able to work together. But that requires trust. And trust requires, something that you build. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. But you got to get in there and you got to build those relationships in communities. in order to really make it work. So that's why we call it community-oriented policing and not people-oriented policing or whatever. It's not that, because the communities is that entire amalgamation of people together in one area.
Right. Rebecca, you want to add something?
Yeah, can you explain to the studio audience, but can you explain to the audience what exactly does the FBI director does? And the reason I'm asking that,
He's ATF, not FBI.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, just
So I mean, I can give you, just again from a leadership perspective, right?
From a leadership perspective,
right? From a leadership perspective, just as I'll use myself because I'm not the director of the FBI, but as a director of any federal agency, you're responsible for oversight, right? And in my instance at ATF, I was responsible for oversight in the enforcement of federal firearms, arson, and explosives laws, and the regulation of the firearms and explosives industry. That was our mission set, right? So every agency has a mission, and that mission set is usually narrowly focused on whatever it is that's in your mission, because you got to have a budget that'll allow you to enforce the mission effectively, right? For the FBI, they have a little bit broader mission, right? Because they not only cover things like white collar crime, they do terrorism, both international and homegrown. They deal with they deal with all kinds of things like espionage. They get involved in violent crime, right? I mean, so they have a real broad mission, and so the FBI director has really got oversight of that whole mission set. And you got to remember that's it's a little bit different because the FBI director normally, and I don't know whether or not it will remain that way, but that director normally was hired with a 10-year term, which allowed that person to maintain consistency in the function of the agency, because the agency's quiet as it's kept. Law enforcement works for the people, right? We all work for administrations. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but the taxpayers pay for those services, right?
Right.
So
and the reason I asked that question, because in light of what's been happening over the past couple of weeks, you have people like all over social media and just people just in general not understanding what the FBI's what the FBI's mission is. And I mean,
in relation to what kind of people don't know?
In relations to the job of an FBI director or ATF director.
Yeah.
Because, it's under the assumption that the president, and I guess in a way the president is your boss, but your boss is really and truly the American people. That's who you work for. And I think a lot of people have gotten it confused because they say, well, some behaviors are just fine because he works for the president. And if the president allows him to do that, then that's just fine. So that's why I was asking, when you have jobs like ATF director and FBI director, exactly what that entails, because I think a lot of people are under misinterpretation of what those leadership positions entail and what it does.
And who those people answer to.
And who those people answer to.
So that's a good point you just made, right? So do remember this, right? There is a hierarchy, okay? And everybody, the way I always tell my folks is everybody work for somebody, okay?
Right.
I mean, unless you God, that's the only person. That's the only one I know don't work for nobody. Work for himself, right? So everybody works for someone in a structured organization, right? So in the Department of Justice, the head of the ATF, the head of the FBI, the head of the DEA, and the Department of Corrections, all those agencies report to the Attorney General. Those agency heads report to the Attorney General. The Attorney General, in turn, reports to the President, right? Now, it's interesting. The FBI is an interesting animal, okay, because they are the only agency that sits at the table in the morning during the White House briefings to the president.
Mhm.
That's the only federal agency head that sits at that table with the other department heads: Department of Treasury, Department of Justice, Department of Commerce, Department of Homeland Security.
The
Those are all
cabinet,
The
yes.
cabinet.
right. Those are all cabinet appointees. The FBI director is the only non-cabinet appointee that's sitting at that table, save the president's, staff, chief of staff, folks like that. But for the folks who are otherwise associated with government agencies. Now, and remember, this is I won't get on my soapbox on this, but you made a good point. You said people don't understand that. Well, to a degree, that's our fault. Okay.
Yeah.
I tell you, a long time ago, I think they stopped teaching civics in public schools.
Right.
Mhm.
And when you stop educating your people about how their government works,
Yes.
they're left to assume. And you know what happens when you assume.
Right.
And most
That's
of the
right.
time, it's not you, it's me that looks like the rear end, right? Because
Yes.
you don't know. And if you don't know, then yes, you should educate yourself. But at the same time, when we fail to provide just the basic understanding, and I'll tell you now, I've raised 6 children, and I know because I had to teach them personally. Hey, look, this is how government works. This
Right.
is what these people do. This is how this works, because they weren't getting it in school, and I didn't want them to grow up ignorant.
Right. Well, let me ask you this real quickly, Marvin. Now, knowing that being the head of a federal police enforcement agency, knowing how your veteran officers have tried to maintain their decorum, have tried to maintain the integrity of the department throughout the 41 years that you have been a part of the department, to see integrity compromised, I know it's got to be disheartening for your veteran people, the veteran people who are there. Even though you're retired, I'm sure that you still have people that you can speak with, and so many people have retired as a result of some of the things they're seeing out there.
Yeah.
How does the department maintain its morale amidst everything that we are seeing now?
So it's hard, and you hit another nail on the head, right? A lot of people retired because I think I told you earlier, I live by a mantra: do the right thing for the right reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you try and you can't, then you have to make a choice.
That's right.
And many friends who I've known for decades in federal law enforcement, who decided, you know what, it's not worth it. The change, it's kind of like the juice is not worth the squeeze, right?
Right.
I mean, you knew that no matter how hard you were doing things right now, it was not going to happen at this point in time. So a lot of people just walked away. Now, the shame of that is that with that, the institutional knowledge, which is no longer really appreciated,
Yes.
walked away with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Knowing what to do, why to do, how to do is very important. And when all of a sudden you have people who don't know,
Mhm.
but
Or
they
don't
just
care.
do because
Or
they
don't
are
care.
told to be. Right.
Yes.
Right. Don't care. Either one.
Mhm.
But because you end up in the same place, wrong place. Because if you don't know those things, then you really do. You have to ask yourself, are you really serving the people's best interest if you don't even know what that best interest is really rooted and grounded in, right?
Right.
It's a hard thing, And now don't get me wrong. I appreciate people who quote unquote stay behind, who are trying their best to do the job every single day. I had to provide, given my time. And sometimes you just you have to make a decision, right? And at some point, you either know you can live with it or you can't, right? And if you can, hey, so be it. If you can't, then then you have to make decisions. And so there are a lot of good people who either walked away or were forced out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you know what? I think what you said before, as a matter of trust, actually means so much, because with a lot of those career law enforcement who came up doing things
The right way.
Mhm.
and I know a lot of them in my family,
That's
in my
right.
friends,
That's
that kind of
right.
thing, who do things the right way, not the ones who are the, a lot of people say, always say the bad apples. No, doing things the right way.
Or the goon squads.
Yeah, well, yeah, doing things the right way.
Yeah.
It's I'm sure it's disheartening to them simply because with such an influx of people who are untrained, unqualified, who are really goon squads coming in to do the bidding of a master, essentially, of a bad actor. When they come in doing that bidding, that means that if you got 22,000 coming in, and the agency might have had 3,000 before that who were trying to do things the right way, and their attrition is moving to where they're leaving because they said, I cannot do this in good conscience. At that point, that means the climate of the agency is changing,
It's shifting
for the worse. Now, when that climate changes, you know how back in the day people would say, be careful who you hang out with, because if you hang out with people doing something wrong, they'll change you before you change them. And I think that's kind of what we have going on right now. When you have now these 22,000 coming in who are vastly, for the most part,
Changing the culture.
changing that culture in a bad way, then at that point,
How do you go back?
Yeah, exactly. It's almost
So
to go back, it almost has to be a house cleaning.
Yeah.
I have a saying, and it's like, it's hard to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Doesn't mean that it's impossible, just means that it's hard. And what it will take is a commitment to rebuilding. And this is what people need to understand. It will be rebuilding over time. Again, this thing is not being, things have not been changed or destroyed over time. They've been kind of done overnight. And it's happened so quickly that the shock of it all is what kind of, caused people to just kind of throw their hands up and say, oh,
Right.
And so now when you start talking about putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, it's going to take a committed, focused approach. And I'll say this too, you don't always have to make Humpty Dumpty the same way. You see, there are some things that, if I'm being honest with you, there's some things. Was there a degree of waste, fraud, and abuse probably in the federal government? Sure, probably so. There's not too many organizations where you don't have some what they call fat that needs to be cut out, right?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then what you do is when you rebuild with a focus of saying, okay, this is what we really need, and we can do without that or without this, right? And so you make it better. It might come, it'll start out smaller because again, if you're going to do it right, that means get back to hiring those people who only meet the most stringent standards.
There you go.
At the level at which they need to have the time invested in order to understand and develop the foundation that they need to serve a 20-year law enforcement.
Right.
It means making sure they have the communication skills that they need in order to interact with a community that is expecting them to protect them, right? So all of those things that take time. So it's so I think the comeback, it's not going to be an overnight thing. Just like the dismantling that has begun. It's kind of been an overnight shock and awe, the first thing, but then there's still a period of time to go here where you're going to see things, I think, even deteriorate, and I'll use that word, more further than they are now. And you're going to have to really wonder, hopefully there'll be people around who know and who are willing to reinvest. But the question is, how long is that? So I don't know.
Go to hit bottom.
Well, Marvin, let's look something squarely in the eye here, because this is something that a lot of people are concerned with. When you have what seems like administrations that have targeted one group, and there's laser beam focus on one group to dehumanize, demoralize, terrorize. When that's the optical, what can be done to repair the trust and the damage that has been done to that particular group. Now, we as African Americans, we know what that's like.
Mhm,
We've been there before.
mhm,
But to be able to see that real time happen to somebody else is very, very, it was really shocking and gut wrenching to me.
mhm.
You know, all I could do is look and say, oh my gosh, that reminds me of hoses being turned on people in the 60s.
Yes, it's like Jim Crow 2.0.
Yes.
It really is.
And I never thought I would see that kind of thing again. And people be okay with it. It's shown on TV and social media, and people be okay with it. People were outraged back in the 60s.
Mhm. Well, now here's the thing. That outrage is coming back again because I one thing I am really happy to see is that people have not gotten so immune to outrage
What they're looking at.
that
Yeah.
they're just like, okay, well,
Whatever.
oh well, that's
Turn
just
the
the way
channel.
it is.
Yeah.
No, let me just turn the channel. No, when Renee Good and Freddie, were shot there in Minnesota, that was
People were outraged.
people were outraged. Now, up to that point, it had been kind of like, at first there were people who were like, okay, get them out, get those aliens out, that kind of thing. And then, get the criminals out. And then all of a sudden now it's only 25% who are actually criminals. And now you got another 75%. I'm not sure if my numbers are exactly right, but it's
They're
a
close.
large number who have zero
criminal background.
history at all. And I think that's where that shift started happening.
The
When
outrage.
that outrage started happening when they see
Families.
the families broken up, the beloved mechanic who's been fixing your car the whole time, hadn't done anything
Just
wrong.
all of a sudden
So-
disappear. You can't find it.
Yeah, disappear. And the thing about it is the way
That is
that
done.
they've gone about it too. They're gonna go and just sweep a whole neighborhood, just snatch people up, and you never hear about them again. That's the kind of thing that the Gestapo was doing. They were doing that, and I think that when that outrage started happening, I think it reached
Ignited. Mhm.
it reached a really turning point
Mhm.
about how people feel about just the subject of immigration
Right.
when Good and Pretty were killed on camera.
Mhm.
It was like, some people were trying to defend it. Oh, they were she was going after the officers.
No.
No, you saw what happened. And it was almost like the administration was saying, don't believe your lying eyes. But they saw it. And that right there was the kind of thing
It's a turning point.
that I think that was a turning point.
Yeah. So you asked the question, how do you
Rebuild that, yeah.
repair it, right? So it starts with leadership. Okay.
Mhm.
You gotta have leadership first.
Yeah.
Daring to be trustworthy. That's going to be accountable. That's going to be transparent.
Mhm.
That is going to be accessible. So you've got to start it there, right? And then from there, you have got to let those concepts permeate
Mhm.
every agency, every organization. Those have to become the standards.
Yes.
And it's like I said, it's going to take some people who are willing to really kind of roll their sleeves up and get dirty, because it's going to be hard work. Because the same people that are in there doing some of the things that we're talking about right now,
Right.
they're not all going to have to leave, and they're not going to change overnight.
Mhm.
So you got to figure out, once you get leaders in place who will hold accountability, and that word accountability, it really does mean something, right? I mean, it's not an obstacle, right? Accountability is an obligation,
Right.
right? It's an expectation. You take an oath to do something, and you are supposed to do it, right? And if
Yes.
you don't, then you should not be allowed in the position of authority that you've entered into.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
And
so
see,
those are
and
gonna be
that's,
some-
I
Yeah.
feel like that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Because as Kim was talking, I was saying the leadership. I was thinking what you said.
Mhm.
It's going to have to be more than just people not being desensitized
Mhm.
to what's happening. It's going to have to be like a twofold process, right?
Yeah.
It's going to have to be people fighting back, but then it's going to take leaders stepping up.
Right.
Herein lies the problem, though. Right now, you can have all the pushback in the world. We literally have a head of this country and his cabinet that's hell bent on making people suffer
Right.
at all costs.
The cruelty is the point.
The cruelty is the point. So
Where have you seen that before?
everybody's frustration and protesting and just being angry and upset and taking it to the streets, at some point that's not going to be enough. If your leaders don't take accountability, which they're still not, and they don't plan on taking accountability, how do you make those inroads come together? Because right now it seems like the only thing that is going to shake that situation up is 2028, not even 2026, 2028. Because even whenever you have one party coming back into power, these
transitional period.
Right, these people can still say, I'm not going to go testify. Or they come and testify before Congress and lie and bully back Congress. Like, so at what point does those inroads get done between now and then?
But it's kind of, you know, it's you can call it, I think you guys call it grassroots in politics, right? It starts with conversations, everyday conversations, even at home, right?
Right.
I know I have a grandson who he was able to vote for the first time, I think last year, you know, and you know, and it was something that, you know, that I encourage. I got a granddaughter who the first time she'll get to vote will be this next election, you know, and I've encouraged them to say, hey, look, it starts there. Whenever you start to feel like your vote doesn't count, or it doesn't mean anything, or it won't make a difference, there's where you start to lose again, right? So first, everyone is going to have to make a conscious decision to be a part of the process, right? I mean, a lot of people died for people to have the rights to be able to do those simple things, right?
Right.
Those simple things can make the difference. So when you start talking about the change that is going to have to take place or need to take place in order to begin a transition back to some form of normalcy, it's going to take everyone focused in the same direction. And then again, I'll tell you, you know, I told you I've been in law or in federal government, go all the way back to George H.W. Bush was the first president that I served under, and the civility that used to exist can still exist.
Yes, it can.
It's okay for us to have different opinions,
Right.
and still be able to have a conversation, and still to be able to reach an agreement, a quote unquote, here's a new word, compromise.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's something that we don't do very much anymore, but it is something that we need to understand, that in order for us to get back to being that America, that society that the world respects, that the world looks to, we have to look at a picture of our past.
That's right.
And try our best to get back to the parts that make sense, and then make other parts even better, right? But until we can get back to the things that we share in common, right? We are all Americans. You know, I used to, I'm a bit of a poet, and I used to write things down. One time, I said, you know, American born, American bred, national anthem in my head. You know, I mean, I'm no different from you, alive or dead. If we're not here, our families won't be fed. I mean, you know, now those are, hey, those lines mean something, because I was sitting there going like, you know, prick my finger, I bleed blood, I bleed red. Take a Caucasian American, prick his finger. Oh, it turns red. Now it turns red when it gets into the oxygen, right? In the atmosphere. That's what makes it turn red. But you know, I thought, man, you know, we're all saying we've got to get closer to that ideal, that we're more alike than we are different. And we all want more of the same things in common than we want different. And then maybe we can start working together toward those common goals.
And not be afraid of people who are different than you.
And let me say this. I told Marvin, I promised Marvin I would not take him over 1 hour. But I want to say this. Okay, I'm gonna sit back like this. Okay, I think I was too close to that microphone. I want to say this. When you came down, we brought you down in 2022 to Houston with and it was our first time seeing a Secret Service
The
detail.
whole Secret
the
Service
whole-
detail.
I'm gonna turn this echo off, and the whole 9 yards, because Kim was the one who had to do, she had to make sure that all of our people down on this end were vetted to make sure that they could be in the same space with you guys and everything. It was really, really something. But the reason that I wanted you to come down, I worked at an inner city school. It is, at that time, that school was probably, I'm going to say, 90% Hispanic, and maybe 5% African American, and maybe another small percent other. But the thing about it is, it was so important for me to show my students that I taught someone who was from a similar background. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth or anything like that. To show them the reality of what they too could be if they were dedicated, if they were focused and had a dream to achieve certain things, that they too could do this. And you were so gracious as to come in and with several other dignitaries from around the Houston area that were invited, and meet those middle school students, along with Gary Harrison from Homeland Security, and meet those middle school students, allowing them to ask questions, allowing them to see you in an everyday stance, and not necessarily a stance of a law enforcement, of a cop, like they would like to say, a cop. But knowing what you went through to get to the place that you were at that time prior to your retirement, to now have people in positions of power to say the only way that you ever were able to ascend to those heights was because of DEI or affirmative action. I mean, basically it's saying the same thing for these students that I teach too, that it's no way on their merit they could achieve these types of things. What do you say to that kind of, how would you respond to that when people say you're only there because of DEI?
Especially when we have seen people who had like Quincy, who was over that Pete Hicks fired,
Oh, CQ, was it CQ Brown?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, when he was, you have someone who has absolutely every single qualification there is, and then
has risen through the ranks,
has every single qualification that you can have. And then somebody who is lesser qualified come in and try to diminish them by saying you just got here because of DEI, because of your color.
How would you speak to that?
So first, over my years, I have learned to again respond and not react to those kinds of things, right? Because when you react, it's kind of like getting stuck with a pin and you just say ouch, right? When you respond, you take a moment to think, right? So my response to those people first is to I don't even dignify their questions. You see, you can only be what somebody says you are if you listen to them and you let it affect you. Okay, so that doesn't affect me, the first thing. The second thing is I've learned to really give grace to ignorance. And and you can do that without
you a better man than me.
Well, you can do that without insulting anybody. You can do, because what I do is in instances where you got people who are just ignorant and don't know any better. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Well, they know not what they say. They know not what they think. They know not what they do. Period.
That's
right.
So
you really just be able to, there are times when, for those kinds of people, you fuel their fire when you give them.
That's right.
Violence begets violence, right? Well, it's the same thing. If you argue with someone, they'll argue back with you.
That's right.
But if you don't, that doesn't mean people, you know, he just talked you down.
Yeah,
Mhm.
What did he get out of it?
right.
Mhm.
Because you didn't get my dignity. I'm
Mhm.
obviously still in the same position. So you
Mhm.
didn't take my job. You
Mhm.
know, you can't change who I am.
Mhm.
You're stuck with me, right? So to me, it's kind of it comes down to what is it that you're looking to get out of that, right? I don't need to prove anybody wrong. I don't have to be better than you are. I don't have to be anything. I just have to be me. I have to be the best me that I can be doing what I do. And by doing that, when I ascend to the top of the ranks,
Yes.
the ranks know, and they know why.
Mhm.
And as a result, it's their respect that I'd rather have than that person who stands on the outside who comes in from the outside and doesn't know his rear end from a hole in the ground.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
those people, I appreciate them, but at the same time, I look at them and I'm like, hey, you don't have a clue.
And
Right.
So
and
going
what
back,
I'm seeing.
so going back to what you were saying, and it kind of resonated with me. You were saying that in order for us to move forward and to move past, and I think this is a key piece that most people forget about. We have to acknowledge history and we have to acknowledge the truth, right?
Absolutely.
We can't realistically get to a compromise when you still have people who are still believing narratives, false narratives, right?
Mhm.
So I know we all want this positively, let's get back to Americans, but now we're in, and that's what all well and great, but we're in a moment where truths need to be told. And when I say truths need to be told, accountability needs to happen. Um
Accountability, it depends on who you're asking to be accountable. There are some people who will never accept responsibility or accountability, but it's going to be up to us to put them front and center to show why they are incorrect.
but what I'm saying is you can't expect for all of us to come together at the table as Americans when we still denying basic truths. And what do I mean by that? I mean, when you say brown people are this, that, and the third. When you say that black people are this, that, and the third. Because at that point, you're denying my humanity. Let's just, I mean, not deny it.
And there's always going to be a sector of people who do that. I don't think that we'll ever come to a place, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Marvin, you can chime in on this. We'll never come to a place where everybody is going to sit and say, okay, well, now I get it. No, some people are never going to get it. But what's most important is that we're able to come to a consensus of most people understand that it is not correct, the narratives that have been spun about us.
But
let me jump in here right quick.
Yeah.
Now, I think
I
part
disagree
of
with
the
that.
part of the bad thing is also the good thing. What I mean by that, the speed in which so many of these history books, things have been taken out of history books, things have been taken out of classrooms, things have been, it's almost like, history was trying to be purged in 6
1 year.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Well, that is an awful thing, but it's also the kind of thing that can break that particular system.
Right.
Because there are people right now, there are kids who are in school. Just because you took that, that history out of that book does not mean they don't remember that history. That doesn't mean that their parents don't remember that history and tell them. That doesn't mean that the internet is not there and does not, show what that history is. So the faster people try to destroy something, then at that point, the faster people
make up for it another way.
Make up for it in other ways.
And the reason I say what I'm saying is because okay, so the reason I'm saying what I'm saying, because I know the conversations that my generation is having. And my generation are millennials and Gen Z under us. But I know the conversations my peer groups are having. And the whole we're gonna come to the table and compromise and do this. They're not interested in doing that. And one of the main reasons they're not interested in doing that, and I'm talking about all of us as a whole, Black, white, Hispanic, everybody, they're not interested in doing that is because of that very reason. You can't sit here and deny people's race, color, creed, gender,
human rights.
and then say, okay, well, kumbaya, we're all Americans, let's gonna come to the table. No. No, that's not happening. And I know this because my generation is having these conversations consistently.
And that is why the leaders that especially the younger generation is pushing forward. You don't have those people who've been sitting around for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you know, doing what is the civil and right thing to do. You have
They're kicking the door in.
They're kicking the door in, and they're coming in and saying, I'm going to fight fire with fire.
And so
bring that same energy
Right.
to you that
let me-
you have brought to all of us to make things worse. We're going to bring that energy back to you, and we're going to make it better.
And we get ready to close out in a minute, but I want Marvin to have the last word, because Marvin, here's the situation. We've got, and the reason, like I said, we wanted you to come on is because we want people to understand that law enforcement inherently is not bad. Law enforcement is something that is here for all of us to make our society safer and better. And that there are good law enforcement entities out there that have simply been painted by a handful of people who have really jumped in and made
society worse,
made things worse. But I want you to have the last word again on how we need to, what we can do as individuals right now to be part of that evolving.
So, and again, I'll start out with a thank you again for just having me here this evening with you guys. It's been a great conversation, and I think the topic is definitely timely, right? So, you said something, and I'll reflect back on that. You know, people who don't know their history are damned to repeat it. I don't care how hard you try to wipe history out of the history books, it's still history.
That's
right. It is there. And it's gonna, and if you don't do something, i.e. learn from it, then you will do the same thing again. It's happening right now. People don't know, not only do they not know their civics, people don't understand their world history. There's a place where you go in time in the 1940s in a country over in Europe where an individual rose to power and did certain things. I'm gonna leave it at that. But if you go back and look, there are many similarities, right? The people were dumbed down over time.
Yes.
You know, they were told what to do over time by someone who they learned to. You can look at all those things, right?
Yes.
And you need to at least know and understand your history. But on this good policing thing, right? I do want to end with that. I'm going to read something to you. I found something. I spoke to the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, Noble. It was probably this has probably been about 2017 or 18. And I found this and I thought, you know what, this is exactly what you asked me. So about good policing in our society today must be constitutional, number one, community oriented, number two, intelligence driven, number three, and morally grounded, number four. It should protect the innocent, deter and disrupt crime, uphold civil rights, without hesitation, and build public trust through transparency and accountability. Effective policing is not defined solely by enforcement outcomes, but by legitimacy. How fairly, consistently, and respectfully authority is exercised. And in a free society, the badge represents service before power.
Here.
There you go. There you go. That's it.
That's absolutely right. Well, Marvin Richardson, the retired acting and deputy director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I gotta put that explosives part in there. We want to thank you so much for stopping everything. You really did, and coming in and being part of this podcast, because we want people to know and understand that that law enforcement should not be inherently bad. There are people who have made it, who have who have tainted that reputation. It in itself should not be inherently bad, because I tell you what, when somebody breaks into your house and you don't have law enforcement, then that's when we miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when law enforcement is the one breaking into your house, then that's when you know it's bad.
That's
in
right.
the morning, at 2:00 in the morning, when they say who you gonna call, it ain't Ghostbusters. Remember
That's
that?
right. That's right.
Somebody breaking in your house,
But
you gonna
that's
call
right.
the police. And you know, again, you don't hear about the good things. Okay,
You
the good things don't make the news. I know a lot of brave men and women out there who do yeoman's work every single day that they put
Yes.
that uniform on. And I used to tell them every day myself. I would say, hey, look, they had a commitment that they had to make to me, and that was, you will go home safely tonight.
Right.
Because you don't put on a badge and a gun and accept a death sentence for
That's
yourself.
Mhm.
That's
You
right.
just don't. And I know that's hard for people to hear, but it's what you do. It's not who you are. Who you are is you're a person. You're in many instances a father or you're a mother, or you're a husband, or you're a wife, or your sister, but you're all of those things in a blue uniform. And it was very
Right.
difficult for me at sometimes being a black man in a blue uniform.
Yeah.
Because I knew how society looked at me.
Right.
But I consciously continued to try every day to demonstrate right principles, right thing, right reason, so that people would develop trust. And eventually, over time, that happened. There are too many communities around this country that I haven't either been in or been with the leadership in the state and local ranks in, that haven't respected their law enforcement leadership for that reason, doing the right thing for the right reason. And again, this generation, I do need to make a comment about that. It's going to take a balance. I'm raising, I got a couple of millennials that I'm raising right now. I'm very, very proud of her. She's a PhD CEO. But you know what? She has those very strong, the same thing that you just talked about, right? And it's time for you guys to take the reins. What you gotta always remember is, you gotta have the wisdom of age in order to direct the fervor of youth.
I love it.
Because if you run too fast, you'll get tired and you won't finish the race. See, there's a reason there was a tortoise and a hare. The hare could have learned something from the tortoise if he slowed down just enough to pick up a little bit of that wisdom. My thing is, I don't want to, I'm ready for you, but I just want to be there for you as a safety net. I don't need to be a crutch. We got too many crutches right now. People still leaning on that daggum crutch. Get out the way. Some people get on and start running, right? But just know, I'm gonna be right here in your rearview mirror. And if you need me, all you gotta do is slow down just a little bit and say, let me ask you a question. I'm more than glad to give you any advice, wisdom, knowledge, understanding that I've been able to procure over these last 63 years of my life. So I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. And God is good. And you know, I've really enjoyed this time, this opportunity. Crystal, I'm so proud of you. And
Thank you, Marvin.
I'm wishing you the best of luck in this race. I know that you have a heart for the community. I know who you are as a person. This isn't about Crystal. This is about the people. This is about right thing, right reason. This is about educating our youth, no matter what color they are, what race they are, what sex they are. It doesn't matter. I know your heart. And that showed when you called out of the blue and you said, well, you're going to be here. You want to stop by my school? And you know what? I was like,
yes.
I ain't been to middle school in a minute.
I knew.
So, but thank you, because it took that courage to want to do something for kids, to make sure that they had something that they could look at and go, wow, that's not too far out of reach.
That could be me.
And they won't know that unless you keep giving it to them. So I'm proud of you. Best of luck. I'm praying for you.
Thank you. Well, Kim.
Thank you so much, Marvin.
And Rebecca. And Marvin, thank you. And like we say every week, we can do it. We'll see you later, Marvin.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Si se puede.
Yes. Si se